Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar program. In today's webinar program, co-produced by the IAPSC and SIA, you're going to get an inside look at the value proposition for leveraging consultants on your security projects. So whether you're planning a technology refresh or maybe scaling up for an enterprise-wide security audit, you're going to learn all those aspects of security consulting. And we'll be drawn from panelists who've worked on thousands of projects, sharing direct perspectives on how you can best apply consultants and really unlock the most value. This program should be about 1 hour today and is really designed for security practitioners. But if you're on and you are a security integrator, a technology vendor, a manufacturer, supplier, project manager, or anyone else working on complex projects, you're going to find a lot of value on today's program. I'm really glad to be joined today by some great speakers. We'll get our slides running here. Sean Ahrens is Security Market Group Leader for Affiliated Engineers. Bill Durso is Founder and Principal Advisor of the Durso Group. Mark Schreiber is President and Principal Consultant at Safeguards Consulting. Sean, Bill, Mark, welcome to today's program.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
So for the benefit of our audience, I wonder if we could take just a minute each and just share some background about yourself, the kind of security consulting you do, your experience in the industry. Sean, can we start with you?
Yeah, certainly. Essentially been in the business for about 27 years. When I was 16 years old, I worked as a security officer. I moved my way up into security consulting. I've set up a number of security consultancies. Now I'm an embedded resource with a large mechanical, electrical engineering firm where I offer subject matter expertise on some of their critical infrastructure projects that necessitate security. And as a result of our previous involvement, we've been able to secure additional work. Beyond that, also involved in standards as well as guidelines, including one that I created my own on workplace violence prevention associated to involuntary separation. Glad to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Great, Sean. And if anyone hasn't seen that, highly recommend you read Sean's work on that involuntary separation practices. SIA helped promote an earlier version of it. I know you've continued to update that. Bill, we're going to pass the mic to you for an introduction.
Thanks, Jeff. So like Sean, have been in the industry for about 27 years as well, the first 20 of which spent as security director, started in retail loss prevention and worked my way up through corporate security, building a couple of departments from the ground up. Have also built it from the operations side, the technology side. So have been in a good position to be able to then move into consulting in around 2016. So have done consulting on security operations, security technology, project management, marrying the technology and physical security to the operations, the processes, and the culture of those end users, from hyperscale data centers to super talls to lifestyle centers, airports, higher ed, and K-12. So happy to be here as well, and thanks for the opportunity.
Great, thank you, Bill. And joining us also is Mark Schreiber. If you were at Securing New Ground, you probably met Mark. But Mark, welcome to today's program.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's an honor to be able to support SIA in this role and be able to help provide this information. My name is Mark Schreiber. I started Safeguards Consulting 14 years ago to specifically support physical security engineering and technology consulting. But my background also is multiple decades within this industry, electrical engineer who worked for a large physical security integrator, was recruited to work for a large global engineering group, doing mega projects, billion-dollar type projects around the globe. So that was, a really great education on how we can really apply physical security technologies as well as physical security design in a holistic manner, to very, very large facilities, and happy to be continuing to provide that for critical infrastructure clients and such. Also a SIA volunteer and supporting different initiatives, and happy to be able to continue to provide this useful information so everyone can protect their employees, protect their assets, and do good in their various roles for different organizations across the globe. Happy to be here.
Great. Yeah, Mark, Bill, and Sean are very active in SIA, and really this webinar is really the fruit of a partnership that SIA CEO Don Erickson and IAPSC's, volunteers, leaders, really put together earlier this summer. We announced, and you're going to find more coming from this partnership, content areas and guidance that's useful for practitioners as well as the vendor community. And also, I think, for those independent security consultants, like the IAPSC membership. So we, real quick, we are going to be making this hopefully a very interactive program. We welcome discussion and Q&A. So make sure to take advantage of those Zoom features to engage with the chat and the Q&A. And if they haven't done so, I know probably our speakers will be dropping in some of their LinkedIn links. So feel free to connect with them following today's program. But to get us started, if you don't know what IAPSC stands for, I'm going to hand it off to Bill to fill you in on everything IAPSC.
Thanks, Jeff. So the IAPSC is the International Association of Professional Security Consultants. So you can move to the next slide. So we are an organization of independent, non-product affiliated professionals that provide unbiased security expertise, advice, information, and recommendations to clients for, an agreed upon consulting fee. We don't profit or, we don't profit or monetarily or otherwise from purchases made by a client. So you can go to the next slide. So and why that's important is, we don't sell or install security products or non-consulting services. We don't conduct private investigations or provide executive protection, patrol, security guard services, those types of things. Nor do we, conduct background screenings, honesty tests, drug tests, accept commissions or referral fees. And why that's important is because as a former end user, we need to be as objective as possible in evaluating technologies and matching that to our clients. That goes to our credibility and everything else that comes along with that. So that's one of the things that we look for. The next slide, please. So most people in the industry call themselves security consultants are in fact sellers of products or services. So you'll see a lot of terms like sales consulting or sales engineering and those types of things. And what that does is it doesn't create a distinguish, as a independent security consultant, was created to distinguish the true consultants from those that are actually selling products. And why that's important is the independent consultant understands the operational aspects, the technological aspects, and the physical security aspects to bringing that entire security master plan together. Some companies out there can do bits and pieces, but others can't do all of them. So we try to make sure that we're bringing all that together for our end users. Next slide. So why are independent security consultants needed? Well, businesses, organizations, and government agencies of all types need services in some of the areas because, honestly, they may lack in-house security expertise, and we see that a lot. At least I do in my practice as well as with CoSecure. In that, we have individuals or end users that don't have the expertise but know they're having issues and they want some unbiased information to be able to move forward with providing that plan. Whether or not there's a requirement for specialized skills or tools or certain credentials, maybe you're going through, your in-house security team is just too busy. As a former security director, I didn't have time for the project-related things, so I had to bring in consultants from time to time. And, have that unbiased outside opinion that may be needed, or, an independent audit required by a regulatory body to come in and do that. Next slide. So those main practice areas that we talk about is your security management consultant, your technical security consultant, your forensic security consultant, your cyber. We're not going to even touch cyber today because that's probably a whole week in itself just to discuss that whole level. But what we want to focus on are the first three, and mainly the technical security consultant piece for our manufacturers and integrator partners. Next slide. So the management consultant is just that. They do threat assessments, vulnerability, security surveys, those types of things, identify security countermeasures in both physical, personnel, and policies and procedures. So what that means is they're identifying and assessing what is happening, your current security posture, evaluating what those gaps are, and then providing the remediation plan to move forward with that. Next slide. And those types of consulting services are anything from liability prevention to crime prevention, emergency planning and business continuity, workplace violence, active shooter training, compliance reviews, regulations, those types of things. And in some cases, putting together conceptual design, spots and dots of security systems as a part of that assessment report being provided to the client. Next slide. And in this day and age, every market segment is affected by security. So you're gonna find consultants that have specialties in many of these areas, one of these areas, and whatnot. So, but all of these segments are an integral part of the security program that you're going to be putting together for your prospective client. Next slide. And some of those service areas that we've already touched upon, providing site security surveys, personnel management, anti-terrorism, tabletop exercises, classified programs, disaster planning and recovery. There's a lot of different specialty areas. So when we do our successful security consulting workshop at ISC East and West, and we tell our folks that are coming in there for the training is, hey, what have you done great over the course of your career? That may be a focus for you if you're going to be jumping into consulting. So they focus on those areas. And those asset types, again, from high net worth individuals to intellectual property protection, critical infrastructure, major events, and the like. The list honestly goes on and on from a consulting side. Next slide. So the forensic consultant is your expert witness, right? This is the one that will serve as a security expert witness. They'll provide the trier of fact of information and perspectives beyond their common knowledge, and they'll accomplish that by evaluating evidence provided through legal discovery. This is important for a lot of the folks that are on here because experts will be called upon to do, and you can go to the next slide, to do a number of different things on behalf of the attorney that they're being hired, because they can serve as a testifying or consulting expert, right? So they can provide testimony in a deposition as an expert at trial or on behalf of the client or the plaintiff or the defendant. The consulting expert can also help and assist the attorney in providing security advice and not have to testify. Why that's important is because the types of cases, and the next slide, please, that we talk about is security negligence, premise liability, inadequate security operations, and now we're seeing more inadequate security technology cases, meaning that, hey, there was a camera or there was a card reader, there was this supposed to work, and it didn't. And now the cases are being brought forward that will include potentially the manufacturer, the integrator that installed it, the security director that may or may not have been overseeing it, and everything else that comes along with that. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as well. And those types of services and deliverables can be anywhere from case review to final reports, depositions, and actually going to trial. Next slide. But what we wanted to focus on today was the technical security consultant. So the technical security consultant provides security technology and applications of physical and electronic security systems. We may work for the architect, the engineer, or the owner. We will develop, identify, and interpret security requirements and constraints and identify those with the culture to provide that complete system or that complete security master plan, if you will. And we'll also make sure that it's integrating with people, the technology, and the procedures while meeting those applicable building codes. Next slide. So in that whole project, which I don't think we need to go through here, is from planning and assessing, from risk management to concept reports to preliminary cost estimates, through design and engineering, which is those SDs, preliminary designs, all the way through to your construction documents, assisting on bidding and negotiations, and as well as overseeing the construction administration project. So from commissioning through and closeout. Next slide. So just to kind of drill down what they can do on behalf of the end user to help to complement the integrator and the manufacturer is obviously we're completing the assessment and identifying those gaps. We're developing the program and the security standards by which you'll be designing to provide a concept report that prioritizes those gaps, identify and ideally the technology that fits with that particular client and end user, and then put together a plan to remediate those gaps. While we're doing that and vetting that technology, we're also determining and identifying those integrator partners that are they certified to be able to install this VMS or this ACS, and then be able to prioritize all of those recommendations that we put together into a prioritized ROM, or rough order of magnitude, because every end user needs a playbook with phases and costs and those types of things before we even get to design. Next slide. Yeah, and in the design and engineering phase, it's just that you're going from SDs to CDs. So from full-fledged construction documents with project specifications, assisting on the bidding process, identifying those integrators, because now you have a shorter list, right? How many times have we gone out and we've bid on public projects and there's a multitude of individuals that are bidding, and the likelihood of getting it is probably very, in the single-digit percentages that you're going to be successful in getting it. Having a project with a consultant involved, you're going to have a much shorter list of integrators potentially, because they've already been vetted on the technologies that are going to be done and installed. Therefore, maybe your single-digit percentages of getting the job now are in the double digits. Next slide. And then the CA piece is just that, providing the bidder negotiations, answering RFIs, and actually being the expert for the end user that may not be able to answer or deal with those questions that may come up from the general contractor, the electrical contractor, the integrator themselves, all the way through to accepting and closeout, and then making sure that now the end user has a good understanding of what they just purchased, as well as an integrator partner that will be with that end user for years to come, hopefully. Next slide. So I'll turn it back over to Jeff to start answering some of the questions and discussion areas that we were talking about earlier.
Bill, that was a great overview. Before we kind of get into the roundtable with the panel, I wanted to ask Mark and Sean if you wanted to add any perspective, particularly on the technical security consultant aspects that maybe Bill touched upon that you'd like to expand upon.
Well, I'll start. I think one of the uniquenesses that we have here is the marketing around security technology, right? So you go out there, everything is artificial intelligence, even though it may not be. So having an expert that has seen the wide variety of technologies out there and can ask the informed decisions to determine if it is actually going to work the way he says it's going to work is paramount to assisting owners in making the right business decisions around technology. I'm shocked to see today how many people will buy expensive technologies based on a relationship with the salesperson and a cut sheet. They don't necessarily do a product shootout. They don't do any kind of review of the technology internally. They just kind of fall on this person says this is going to work and it's going to work. And then when we get into the field, we get these uniquenesses like, well, your screening technology doesn't work because you have a large metal frame door, and that's the problem. It's always a problem on the end user, and that's really where we level the field. That's where we actually support the owners in making informed business decisions and using our leverage to really get the product and the functionality that is ultimately desired by the respective client.
That's excellent. And to add on to Sean's point, the technical security consultant role, also brings into it the fact that we have a lot of different backgrounds and experiences that the security stakeholders come from. But when you put it in the perspective of what is actually needed to move forward with a security improvement project, connecting all those dots is a role that we play, that the technical security consultants play. Whether you're talking about how do we take the pure risk prioritization and identification of what we're really trying to get at, and clearly identifying how that can meet into a security improvement effort. What technology applies, what improvement to the building applies, what operation applies, to the actual understanding of the construction process, because it takes years to understand the ins and outs of a large construction project. And so that's where a technical security consultant can really come into play in understanding, the security ecosystem overall. So Bill, Sean, and I have the privilege of being, board members for IAPSC's board of directors, and we serve this large group of professionals in helping them to bring their expertise, to bear. And so when you are using a technical security consultant, you're hiring their experience, you're hiring what they've learned from many years of applications, and bringing that into your team. So if you don't already have a large team that can support that, that's where they can come in and fill that, or they can bring in, one of those many specialties that Bill identified, to fill the gaps where you have a need.
Well, we've touched upon some of the, even in this follow-up discussion, some of the big discussion areas we're going to come back to. Before we do, if you're on the program today, on the Zoom program, send us some questions in through the Q&A. We'll be monitoring that, trying to address those. We do have some sort of built-in discussion that we wanted to jump in first, but we'll keep an eye on that as well. So the first bullet I have up there is about managing complex stakeholder relationships. Mark, you actually kind of touched upon this just a little bit there. So let's talk about the relationship between stakeholders on a project. So you've got the corporate security team, the end user, right? The corporate IT team, the consultant, obviously, the hardware vendors, the software or cloud service providers, the integrator or integrators, depending on potentially even construction management teams as well. Potentially even an IT VAR, doing some IT work on it. So a lot going on, especially when you get into the big projects, or as Mark, I think you sometimes joke, the mega projects, particularly. But I want to talk about, maybe get into what makes these complex relationships work really well, but also what can make them go not so well. I don't want to say bad. Let's stay positive on it. Sean, your thoughts first on that. What, on the complexity of those relationships and some advice for our viewers today.
It's a very loaded question, but I will use some anecdotal information and stories to really substantiate my opinion. I think the most important aspect to any relationship is good, solid communication. The consultant should be communicating back with you. You should be communicating with the consultant. This is from an architectural engineering standpoint, a contractor standpoint, or an integrator standpoint. The lack of that communication leads to some significant issues. So, far and foremost, when you're talking with a project, having those individuals together and communicating and not working in a silo is going to have the ultimate best benefit for the project. Now, for instance, I'm working on a project now, a design project, and this is a trend that we're starting to see. We're starting to see a new type of construction project, and that is an integrated project delivery and or a design build project. Before, in a traditional bid build process, the consultant does his work, he works with the architect, they bid the project, and we work with the integrator afterwards to address RFIs or what have you. If your consultant is doing a good job, there should be really limited RFIs in that process. However, now we are going to speed, we're going to market much faster with these designs. Many times the GC is hired to basically build out the project. They say, this is the cost of it. They do it based on square footage. And the GC holds the contract and the consultant is underneath that. So understanding that relationship, no longer are you working necessarily for the owner, you're working for the general contractor. And if you don't have a good understanding of that, you can create some significant friction within the project. So knowing how that works, again, starts with communication. By far, I find on all my projects that the first thing the consultant should do, if it's bid build integrated project delivery, is to partner with the integrator. I am working on many projects, and the first thing I do is I reach out to that integrator and I say, hey, listen, good to work with you. Looking forward to, carrying this flag up the hill. We're all a team. Here's how I can support you. I can answer your questions because you're going to put an RFI. I'm going to answer that RFI. And my response is going to be, see page 6. That does not need to be an RFI. So we can, facilitate faster communication. Call me up on the phone. If I don't have the answer, I'll tell you, put it in an RFI and we will answer it as a formal record. But many times I'm just saying, hey, look at this drawing, look at this keynote, something that they may have missed. Integrators that are adversarial to consultants, be forewarned, you're going to put yourself in a world of hurt. Consultants that are adversarial to integrators are going to be seen as a problem in the project, specifically as we move into integrated project delivery. So again, I want to just emphasize the most important aspect is open communication. And let's move away from, the typical silo approaches and look towards the integrated project delivery components on all of our projects to make them better.
Bill or Mark, additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, thanks, Jeff. It's definitely being on the same team and everything else, but it's also being there early in the project process, right? Many a times, and one of the last projects I was on, security was an afterthought. The general contractor came right out and said, "Hey, I don't care about security." Well, until they needed a CO to get into the building to make sure that their doors did in fact release when they had the fire test. So getting in early during that design process, working with, like Sean has said, the architects, the designers, and the end user to understand what they need, how they need it, and then mesh that security into that project design. One of the other things is that can impact a project is not having the security owned or driven by someone within the end user organization. So like Sean has said, it's like in some cases, the consultant's brought in because they're the expert on the client's behalf. We want to make the job as easy as possible for everyone involved, so that we're asking the right questions and those types of things. So, to that point, just being able to be in there early and then going from there and just working as a team.
Yeah.
And excellent points. Just to add to that is simply, we all have the same goal on the construction project. So at the very beginning of the project, have we defined what success will be, and that we're laser focused on that success all the way throughout. So this team effort is something that's worth repeating, whether you're the integrator, whether you're the consultant, whether you're a facilities person, whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're the general contractor. Everyone should be focused on that same goal, and it's about how do we help the team work together to meet that goal and not be siloed and myopic and just having to only worry about what our contract is specific for. So don't let yourself be handicapped by not setting yourself up for success when you're engaged on the project is really, an important thing to keep in mind and take advantage of that.
Jeff, I'd just like to take a moment to recognize Don's question in the chat. And he says, how do you measure, evaluate the end user's appetite for adopting new integrated technology? What turf battles have you experienced or witnessed with an end user client, either through working with an E&E firm or directly with the end user? So I'm going to just really capture this very quickly with regards to how this has created some impacts in the past. So we have an architect's very excited. Client comes to him and says, we're looking at doing a new surveillance system, and we want to have do a new surveillance system. We are under the contractual component of the architect. Architect comes to us, wants us to put a proposal together because he can mark it up 10-15%. The challenge is when we talk about technology and there is no real interface into architecture, we're just talking about technology, it's not a place for that architect to be. And certainly I will advise the architect, we certainly can mark this up, but this is probably something that is going to get very deep dive and you probably don't want to be involved with it. I would submit that you tie us, integrate us, assign us to the owner so we don't have to work with you necessarily directly. We'll keep you in the loop or what have you, but we're going to be doing a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions. I'll keep you on track with the progress, but this is going to be so boring for you, and you're going to be calling me after saying, what's a VPN? What's a TCP/IP? And it's just going to be something that's going to take away from what you do best as architecture. Now, with regards to when we get involved with that, the first thing we talk about is, okay, what do you want to accomplish? Just tell me verbalize to me what you're looking to do. Well, I saw this really cool product and, people coming through the doorway, I can type in the word red and it'll find all the people red in the building. Okay. All right. Note that. What else are you looking to do? I wanted to do this. What kind of recording resolution you want? I want that. I want this. And we kind of put this together in a user wish lists. And the final component of this is once we have that user wish list, we talk with their IT department. We want to get them involved as quickly as possible because there is no worse stumbling block than not involving or communicating with the owner's information technology department on new technology adoption, which is going to be using their computer network, and they're going to have a host of cyber issues associated to that. Depending on the vertical, if it's healthcare or if it's university, you have a whole slew of problems. You might have the best technology, but to roll it out, it's going to take 2 years through approvals and the legal red tape to basically indemnify the client from the manufacturer because of cyber or what have you, or integrator. So that's something I definitely want to bring up. Great question, Don.
Yeah, very good question. We kind of got into a little bit. So I wanted to bring up the project management question. So we talk about all these stakeholders. There are project managers, within construction, within integration, within the security practitioner team, all the different groups that are involved in these projects. The consultant has sort of a unique lens upon this, right? So I wanted to, Bill, maybe start with you and just talk about where does the security consultant sit when it comes to overall project management and the relationship on that?
Sure, that's a great question. And what I'm finding, aside from maybe the architect, the security consultant actually is almost the hub amongst the other spokes in a project, right? So, and what I mean by that is what we've already kind of touched upon already is the consultant is probably one of the rare folks on the team that touches everyone that's in the project, the architect, the general contractor, the electrical contractor, the design team coordination with all the other disciplines, the integrator, the end user, and everything that comes along with that. So that you're almost becoming the maestro of the orchestra to make sure that everyone is aware of what everyone else is doing to make sure you're minimizing those RFIs, those questions, those door coordination meetings, which we all love to do, and pointing fingers so that you're not getting to a point where you're pointing fingers and those types of things. Because at the end of the day, as a consultant, I want everyone involved to be successful in the project. So what do I mean by that? After establishing a security master plan and those design security standards and everything that we're building to now, which I hope we're doing with most of these projects, is establishing those security standards. What are those design standards so that the integrator knows what they have to do? The general contractor is well aware as to what they need to do and everything else. For a win-win for everybody, I want to make sure that I'm at a point where the manufacturer is hard spec'd in the bid package, right? Once the technology is vetted with camera shootouts and manufacturer's presentations, and then ultimately approved by the end user. I want to then establish that short list of integrators who are certified to install the components that we've already vetted and that equipment that we've already vetted. Because I want that integrator to be a long-term partner to that end user, because me as a security consultant, I may be still available for the end user, but ultimately I'm probably going to be walking away, and what's going to be left is the manufacturer's product and the integrator who's going to be the constant go-between with the end user and that technology. And then in addition to that, there's a clear understanding for the end user as to what they invested in. So many times I've gotten questions from manufacturers as, well, how come they didn't know that this VMS does this? Or how come they didn't know that this access control didn't do this? One, they either didn't ask the right question, or the integrator may not have known the answer or anything like that. But we wanted to make sure that now they have a clear understanding. So we're almost the oil in the gear to make sure that everything is flowing and doing everything together, so that if there's questions that the end user has, we can answer. We can get that answer, or we can get that answer at a deeper technical level with that integrator or with that manufacturer, so that at the end of the day, at the end of the project, everybody looks good. The integrator looks good. They now have a long-term partner. The manufacturer spec that comes along with that. Now their product is in there. And the end user, who has already spent a ton of money on a given project, is happy on the product that they're getting at the end of the day.
Yeah. Good thoughts. Mark or Sean, any additional thoughts on project management?
I think from my standpoint, the project management component it really ties to Brian's statement about if you don't have early on communication or have an understanding of things that are going on, you really can have a big problem. So I'll just give you a real quick anecdotal story that I talked about. I'm big on stories. We've got a client. We've got a optical turnstile that's being put in place. This is working with a university. University has 3 card readers because we've got 3 separate systems that have to be plugged in. We talked about integrating to 2 card readers. The architect is extremely upset because we have so many card readers, but we don't have a flat file integration presently. Moving forward, they said, "Well, we want to get away from this 3 card readers. We need to go to 1 card reader." Okay, great. So we have a discussion. We have a discussion call, and during this conversation, the woman says from the owner side, "Well, what are we going to do about destination dispatch?" And okay, destination dispatch. Okay, let's have an offline discussion about that. We were not involved in that conversation. We are approximately 4.5 months from opening, and they want destination dispatch. They want Bluetooth capability, and this is written into the lease. And we don't have any requirements for that, which now forces the flat file integration. So now we are basically, speeding towards the finish line by having multiple meetings, having all these things that should have been done ahead of time because people it just integrates. And it happened because the elevator contractor pushed the destination dispatch component on the owner as an ad services. The owner bought it, and no one ever thought to involve the consultant or the A&E. They were going to just install. So we're at this point. So again, really great aspect of project management and that communication component that I continue to just really kind of drive forward is you got to have this communication, you got to have open communication, you got to be able to talk to people very quickly, especially in the future as we leverage Revit, where we're in a cloud-based environment. And I've got security device placement on a door. It's hosted to that room. And the architect says, "I'm just going to move that room." My devices disappear. And they won't ever be put back in the other room because I don't know that room has been moved.
Mark,
Just to add just a little bit of extra effort to what's previously been stated and so great is the role that we fit in a consultant role is at a position where we can see more moving pieces on the project, right? As Bill identified, we are seeing what other engineering firms are doing. We are seeing what the architects doing. We are seeing what the GCs and other contractors are doing. And most importantly, we have that interface to, the ownership and understanding what their intents are and what their goals are, and maybe knowing about a change happening months before it actually is communicated down to the contractor level. So when we take, great project manager at the contract level, such as SIA's CSPM, Certified Security Project Manager role, and bring those professionals, we can communicate to them at our level what other trades are doing, what other contractors are doing. And then most importantly, being that translator, as I like to say, from the owner on what their needs are into what is the definition of success. So that role, whether it's a formal project management role, and that's what our activity is to manage multiple contractors, or it's more of just a pure translator role, right? It's a natural fit for that role that we play.
yeah, great points. So I'm gonna turn to some audience questions. By the way, we've got a really, really great audience today. The questions that are coming in, the chats, these are excellent. So keep those coming. We're here to answer those. One of the questions that came in, this is a good one. They want to ask, what are the largest differences that you're seeing between construction / low bid type? I guess that's more the integrated design build sort of approach and owner direct consulting. Obviously a big change, as you were mentioning earlier, in terms of where the consultant sits. Bill, how about I hand that one to you to start us off?
Well, I mean, case in point. So it was on a project where, like the one that I was referencing earlier, where the general contractor didn't care about security. they fit a construction project into a number, right? And we see this a lot. So then what happens is a lot of the other low hanging fruit they'll consider, like the security system, maybe the low voltage IT that's going to be going through, the AV and everything else that comes along with that, are now add-ons that the owner was not aware of, that are now being done because the owner had a number, the GC fit their project into the number, but the finishes aren't great in the lobby area. There's a lot of things that were missed because they were trying to hit a budget number versus a true, overall project. So in that particular case, I'm not a big fan of them, but you have to deal with them as they come along. For me personally, I would prefer to work for the owner direct. You are that client's representative when it comes to security. So when you're sitting in a conference table in a project meeting or something like that, and you want to have something asked and answered at a level where everyone has a clear understanding of what their next steps are when they walk out of that conference room, they have a clear understanding. So for me, I prefer doing and working direct for the owner, the building owner, the company themselves, the end user themselves, because I'm sitting in that room now as an equal with that general contractor that says, hey, we have to do this, we have to do that. But here's the other things that you also need to include in that project.
Good feedback. Sean, I saw you nodding your head there. Thoughts on the differences in these two approaches?
So I think the issue that we have moving forward is we are going to see more integrated project delivery projects. It's just, the speed, the ability for the owner to get a building faster. It is just something that's going to be moved forward. That communication is going to be manifested in the big room discussions where everyone's kind of come to play, bringing their ideas. We need to do this. We need to do that. I think that Revit is also going to be in a very, very important component in project delivery in the future, but it does not take away from the value of an experienced security consultant that can bring in the thoughts and ideas that people are not thinking about. Security is a 1% issue. It's a 1% issue until it's not. And this is extended into design as well. Getting those individuals in play into these discussions as quickly as possible is going to make for a more secure building. It's going to support for organizations and being able to address not only current threats, but future threats, and having a more proactive mindset towards the implementation of these systems. They're all going to be focused on dollars, right? It's going to be a square footage aspect, but you need to have a consultant in there to kind of give you the ideas. Hey, listen, this is what you need to start thinking about, regardless of how this project delivery occurs in the future.
So I'm going to jump to the next question. We've got a lot of good questions coming in. We're going to try to get to as many of these as possible. Question asks, Jim asks, your preference, what do you like? Straight bid with rigid specs, or do you like to see more of an RFP with goals and objectives laid out? Mark, which way do you go?
Yes, so the short answer is neither, or a combination of both. Basically, the reality is in today's world, especially with innovating technologies, it's very hard to do a complete straight bid with every single item fully defined and model numbers and et cetera. And then you have the risk of time where, okay, you put that spec out, if it's going to be purchased 6 months, 9 months, a year later, a lot of those model numbers have changed, and so therefore it doesn't apply. But then there's also a massive risk if you just do pure what we call performance-based specs, and you don't have good control of quality. All right, because someone could easily come in and say, oh well, my $100 product has the same level of performance as their $1,000 product, and my marketing document says so. Right, so you have to have that blend. So essentially, we recommend getting to the level of detail that's appropriate for the scale of the project. And when we can't get to that level of detail, we're very clear about the performance requirements. And usually this hybrid approach is the most successful.
Good. Sean or Bill, any additional thoughts? Otherwise, we'll jump to one of the other questions.
No, I completely agree with Mark. You can't straight bid everything, especially if you're doing design a year in advance and you got to get something out there and all of a sudden model numbers change, things change and everything else. So yeah, complete agreement with Mark.
I would like to pivot on that from a design standpoint, but also offer some guidance to those that might be considering obtaining a consultant in the future. When you're putting together your proposal for a consultant, make sure you address the who, what, when, where, why, how, right? Who is putting this out? Why are you putting this out? How do you want this done? When do you want this done? And give us the details associated to that. I would also suggest that you require that either the firm be a member of International Association of Professional Security Consultants, or they hold a certified security consultant designation to showcase that independence. Because what will happen is we will evaluate those bids. The first question we will ask is, can a product service supplier be able to support this bid, or are you looking for an independent consultant? And many organizations will say, no, anybody, a contractor, or a service provider, guard service, and then you lose all of that independence because those consultants are going to drop out.
Good feedback there. All right, so let's jump into some more of these questions. I'm going to tie one of the questions that came in through the chat along with one of the questions that we wanted to discuss in this follow-up period. And the question in the chat was, with a big shift to cloud, PAC systems and video solutions, what are the challenges that you're seeing? So shift to cloud, your challenges there. And then I want to talk about, come back and talk about how we evaluate, or how independent consultants evaluate emerging technologies. Let's see. I tell you what, Bill, I'll start with you on that one. By default, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the challenges, and Sean talked about a little bit earlier, when you're talking about AI right now, right? So everyone has an analytic. Everyone was selling it on the floor. If you were at GSX or ISC, you saw that all over the place. One of the things that, although there's a big shift to the cloud, end users are still, they're not fully into it. And as a consultant, I don't know that I'm necessarily recommending a complete cloud solution. Most want some sort of hybrid, which is where I see it. They want on-prem for 30, 45 days. Maybe they run it up to the cloud for analytic purposes and those types of things. And then it sits as an archive later on. So that's what I'm seeing right now. I mean, I've opened up to Sean or Mark as to what they're seeing, but it's definitely, and some of those challenges are just that, right? What algorithms are they using on the analytics for any VMS that's out there? What are they using on the edge for those cameras and those devices and those types of things? So there's a lot that goes into that, and whether or not you're running all that up to the cloud for analytic purposes, or like I said, or you just want to keep something on-prem. At least what I'm seeing is they want a hybrid approach right now, because they don't want to have to manage their own data centers or IDF closets or anything like that and have servers in closets anymore like they used to.
I think the other component around cloud, and if I might compliment Bill's thoughts on that, with regards to the hybrid approach and different things, you just need to focus on what the end user wants. And I want to just really stress, this is kind of, again, where a consultant really adds a lot of value to a client. People kind of see AI or biometrics as a de facto, like everyone, if you say you do have biometrics, then you're using your product in this way. Or if you say that you have an on-VIF camera, well, it's clearly an on-VIF camera, and it's the standard across the board. And the same thing with AI. Well, it's AI powered, then you have AI, and you're using running ChatGPT or what have you, right? And that is just not the case. I'm finding many people, marketing people, are using the terms, but when you actually do a product shootout, where many consultants will advise, because there are no technical standards behind these things. So you can have one on-VIF camera and another on-VIF camera can look completely different, right? And so having that consultant to kind of advise you on the pros and cons to these technologies, and moreover, the subject topic that we're discussing, cloud-based computing, is something that, they make informed decisions rather than just purchasing. They make informed decisions about what the outcome is and can they live with the risks associated with that. For instance, I have clients that have cloud-based computing, and I literally tell them, okay, well, you're going to need a bridge network. And what does that mean? two disparate networks, your Xfinity, your Comcast, your Verizon, your cellular backup, whatever. It's coming into a bridge network. It forwards that connection in case you have an outage, right? Because the network systems are not as resilient as they were with phone systems. We don't have, the 99.999 uptime anymore. Now, what they need to understand is there is the possibility that you will not be able to operate that system if you do not have that bridge network. Fast forward, and if I could, somehow channel my crystal ball capabilities into picking lotto ticket numbers, I would be in a much better place. When the client calls me up, a couple days earlier, they had a big problem. They had an employee they had to take out of the system as a result of the potential for workplace violence, and they couldn't do it because the network was down. The internet was down. So they have all the stored stuff on the panel, and it's making all the distributed intelligence, but they've got no information about what's going on, nor are they able to manipulate the system in real time. And, I talked about this, and he's like, well, how did this happen? That's another thing. Clients often forget these things that we talk about. So I shot him the email. He's like, well, how do we avoid this in the future? Right. So we can avoid a lot of these problems by leveraging a good consultant that has the experience and breadth in the particular areas and focus that you're looking to achieve.
Good stuff. Mark?
And Jeff, yeah, I'll just take this in another direction because this was a very hot topic in our group at Securing New Ground, is the changing dynamics that we're seeing, not just for the application of cloud-based services and specifically, software as a service, but the needed services to provide technologies that are artificially intelligent based, right? We've been doing AI for 30 decades, 3 decades, I should say, 30 years. We just haven't called it AI until just recently. And so how we support video analytics and how we support some level of process automation in moving forward to when we actually can start taking some type of learning-based AI solutions in there, that's not a one and done approach. We can't just say, here's your contract, install it, say it's good and walk away. It requires a much greater level of support and service capabilities. And so we are helping our clients, and the partners within this large team to navigate how that's best implemented and how it will continue to support, and the risk in, okay, it's now 2 years, contract's over, they no longer have support for the product. Does the product still continue to operate, or does it go into, a failure mode? And now we're, in a serious concerns. So we're always trying to kind of support that through education internally to our teams, but also bringing the manufacturers information and, sometimes asking them to publish this information. So it's very clear on what's the capabilities and the needs for successful implementation.
Yeah, good point. In the chat, there's a great discussion about, the differences between public and private specs. And for those who are watching this on demand, Bill, I wonder if you could just shape that conversation really quickly so that it's in that recording as well.
Yeah, sure. So Pam Prini asked a great question. When we were talking about hard specs and open specs and those types of things before, there is a difference between the public and private side, right? So if you're going after a public bid or anything like that, you're going to have an and or equal, or something that fits, that also touches on all the other requirements for a given company, whether they are, women owned, if there's any kind of conflicts or those types of things that come about, right? Whereas you can actually do a harder spec probably with a private or corporate client, because they are already built in with their technologies and those types of things to really have, hey, this is the make and model of the camera, here's the manufacturer we're going to be using for this. Whereas in a public side, it has to be open to everyone. Therefore, you may have to have some more flexibility when you're looking at those specifications or putting those specifications together.
Good feedback. So I know we're kind of running up against our hour-long time period for this program. I do want to touch upon a question that we had sort of seated amongst ourselves, particularly for the vendors who are on this program. So, as independent security consultants, this is a listening opportunity for our manufacturer vendors who are on the program. What do you need from the manufacturer vendor community that you're not getting, or what are areas the manufacturer vendor community can improve to help you and ultimately your clients get to that success. So, Sean, how about we start with you on that one?
Sure. So I think that make it as easy as possible. Back in the day when I started out this, I had a huge library. I had Burr, I had American Dynamics, I had Software House. I literally just pull out the binder. I'd have the information I want. And in a digital world, it's tremendous. But many people lock down their portals. I find that I can't get access to the portal very quickly because I got to do something or what have you. So single sign-on or ability to basically authenticate very quickly, with a QR code or what have you, I think is paramount because we need this information immediately. And sometimes I send the password reset and it goes into my spam filter and I can't find it. And then I'm trying to call someone. It's just very difficult. All manufacturers should start working in Revit, should be modeling their devices in Revit, making their devices easily adoptable and families easily adoptable so that if a consultant wanted to use a specific product because it's existing and they're building on it or what have you, we can implement that very quickly. That carries over into the integrated project delivery where we're handing off our Revit documents to the contractor and they're populating in it. And it almost becomes like a digital twin, if you've kind of heard that terminology. So those are things that I would really impress on is the accessibility. I mean, certainly you got to have your security, right? But how do we do that efficiently, effectively, so that when the consultant needs the information, they can grab it very quickly and they get everything they need to address the concern or the need for the project.
Good. Good.
And I would,
Yep.
sorry, Jeff, if I may, I would double down on that, right? Don't hide your secrets, provide all the information that you can that a consultant engineering firm would need to know about your product. And then I would add on to that is education, and not education just in one area, but to everyone, right? We can all do recorded webinars and post them and talk about very technical deep dives about our solutions. We can provide white papers and provide that information, right? So providing that education from the owner's perspective, the consultant's perspective, the integrator's perspective, as well as your partner manufacturers, right? Giving all that information and making it accessible and giving them the education opportunities every possible way you can. Because it's many times we deal with a project and they're like, oh, well, we can do that. And like, well, how would we have possibly known that that was even an option for us to provide that level of capability or integration to your product if you have no documentation that states that, right? That's where that information needs to be shared and educated.
All right, Bill, I'm going to throw you a softball question. You had to know this one was coming. How does someone go and find a truly independent security consultant?
Well, I mean, let's put it this way. I don't know anyone in the industry right now that is not busy. So if they're not busy, I would maybe question that, right? The industry is so diverse. There are so, it's for as big of an industry, it's very, very small. Everybody knows everybody. Everyone's aware of, most consultants' capabilities, what they can and can't do. Do they have the credibility to do that job they're bidding on? Those types of things. For me, it's a lot of word of mouth. Are you comfortable? What's your comfort level? What kind of relationship do you have with that potential client or that potential manufacturer or that potential integrator? There's been plenty of times where I've gotten questions from integrators or have reached out because they say, "Hey, Bill, we have a client that we're working with right now, but they need a program. They need something. We can't do that. We know they're going to need widgets down the road. We need your help." Those types of things. So it's word of mouth. I mean, you could post the LinkedIn. You can go on the IAPSC website and search for a consultant. But honestly, it's word of mouth and it's credibility. I mean, we can mark it out all day long, but until you're down in the weeds and you're actually doing the work, and then it goes and says, "Wow, Bill did a great job," or "Sean did a great job," or "Mark did a great job," I'm going to use them again, and it just kind of builds from there, I think.
There's also 3 letters maybe to look for.
Well, there's a bunch of different things, right? Are they a CPP? Are they a
Yes.
CSC? Are they a
Yes.
PSP? Are they certified in what it is they're trying to consult on? In some
And
cases they
Jeff
are, in
is,
some cases they're not. And you'll know that right away. You'll know that right away just in having conversations with individuals as you're sitting there around a conference room.
Yeah, I think Jeff was also asking for the softball. Are they a SIA member in a consulting
Oh, are they
community
a
as
SIA
well?
member?
Is
Well,
that
well, and
right?
also the
Well,
CSC, the
so
CSC though, but yeah.
so to that point, Jeff, I mean, that's one of the things, right? There are a ton of consulting members that are SIA members. Be great if they were IAPSC members, right? So there's definitely some leveraging of resources. There's a great respect there that we're, in building those partnerships and things like that. And at the end of the day, SIA has recognized the importance of having consultants at the table for projects and things like that. So that's why we welcome this partnership and everything else. But at the end of the day, we're trying to make everybody look good. As a consultant, I want the manufacturer, the end user, the integrator, the GC, I want to make some money and look good at the end of the day. So, I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, so that's why we're having this, just to, make sure projects are successful from all fronts, whether you're the integrator of the project, a vendor, providing the solution, independent consultant. And I just want to, as we close today, I do want to mention that, again, this is the start of, I think, a great partnership between IAPSC and SIA. In fact, clearly we've got some more projects ahead, because some of the questions we didn't even get to in the chat and the Q&A will hopefully feed forward some projects. The IAPSC team has a great program coming up at ISC East. Bill, you just want to touch upon that?
Yeah, sure. So we have the Successful Security Consultant Workshop that we'll put on pre-conference all day. Just if you are interested in becoming a consultant and understanding the nuances of building a business, starting a business, those types of things, we spend a whole day going through all of those things and then helping to identify what those bumps and bruises are along the way, so that you can avoid them if you decide to want to take that jump, whether as a former director of security, CSO, from law enforcement, military, or what have you. So it's a great opportunity.
Well, as we've come to the 1 hour mark, I really want to thank Bill, Sean, and Mark for coming on the program. I think this was an excellent conversation. Look forward to more of these, and also delivering more content that's co-produced by our two organizations. So, gentlemen, thanks for being part of today's program.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Thank you.
And thank you for our audience. This now concludes today's webinar from SIA and IAPSC.